Friends, we gather in worship this morning in a week that has left hearts everywhere broken in grief. In these days, we hold fast to the love and to the light that is love and goodness of our God. We enfold ourselves in hope that continues to roll away tombstones. We hold ourselves in faith that upholds weary and anxious spirits. On this particular Sunday, the gospel lesson comes from Luke. It is the story of the Emmaus Road travelers. From Luke chapter 24, verses 13 to 35. Now on that same day, two of them were going to a village called Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem. They were talking with each other about all the things that had happened. While they were talking and discussing, Jesus himself came near and went with them. But their eyes were kept from recognizing him. He said to them, "What were you discussing with each other as you walked along?" They stood still, looking sad. Then one of them, whose name was Clopas, answered him, "Are you the only stranger in Jerusalem who does not know the things that have taken place there in these days?" He asked them, "What things?" They replied, "The things about Jesus of Nazareth, who was a prophet, mighty in deed and word, before God and all the people. How our chief priests and leaders handed him over to be condemned to death and crucified him. We had hoped that he was the one to redeem Israel. Yes, and beside all of that, it is now the third day since all these things took place. Moreover, some women in our group have astounded us. They were at the tomb early that morning, and when they did not find his body there, they came back and they told us that they had seen a vision of angels who said he was alive. Some of those who were with us went to the tomb. They found it just as the women had said, but they didn't see him." Then he said to them, "Oh, how foolish you are! How slow of heart to believe all that the prophets have declared. Was it not necessary that the Messiah should suffer these things and enter into his glory?" Then, beginning with Moses and with all the prophets, he interpreted to them the things about himself in all the scriptures. As they came near the village to which they were going, Jesus walked ahead as if he were going on. They urged him strongly, saying, "Stay with us, because it is almost evening. The day is nearly over." So he went in to stay with them. When he was at the table with them, he took bread, blessed it, and broke it, and gave it to them. Their eyes were opened. They recognized him, and he vanished from their sight. They said to each other, "Were not our hearts burning within us while he was talking to us on the road, while he was opening the scriptures to us?" That same hour they got up and returned to Jerusalem, and they found the 11 and their companions gathered together. They were saying, "The Lord is risen. He has appeared to Simon." Then they told them what had happened to them on the road, and how he'd been made known to them in the breaking of bread. May these words from Scripture offer comfort and strength to God's people this day. Amen. Last Monday evening, I lit a candle and placed it in my living room window, joining many other Maritimers who were also sitting quietly in their homes with their candles, grieving and remembering. Those tiny lights flickering amid the shadows, fragile signs of hope and faith amidst a landscape of unimaginable violence and sorrow. Listening to last evening's Sunday evening news broadcast, as the story of the day's events began to unfold, The words of Walter Ferguson's hymn, "Stay with Us Through the Night," kept running through my head. The hymn begins, "Stay with us through the night. Stay with us through the grief. Stay with us, blessed stranger, till the morning breaks new light." The verses of this hymn capture the heartache and the sorrow of the first Emmaus Road travelers as their hearts and souls struggled to make sense of all that was unfolding around them. They were aware of the presence of violence as a part of their world, but this time it had come close to them in an unconceivable way. A friend, a neighbor, a community leader, a teacher and mentor was now dead. His life taken from them, and from them in a matter of hours. It was senseless and brutal, claiming the very breath of hope within them. Unable to safely be with one another, many sequestered themselves in their homes. Others quickly made their way down the road towards new places, their minds and hearts preoccupied by what they had seen and heard. Such was the case for Clopas and his traveling companion. Heading home, overwhelmed by what had happened, feeling very much lost and alone. They're skeptical. They're skeptical of the story they'd heard of just that morning of an empty tomb. A message that death had not been the end for the one who'd been such a central part of their lives. So immersed are they in their grief that they do not see or recognize the one who joins them on the way. Inviting himself into their journey, he listens as they share their brokenness and sorrow, as they lift up their longing for a sign of hope, any sign of hope, amidst this death-filled landscape. It is then he begins to tell them a story maybe as old as time itself. The story of God's amazing love, a love that accompanied an enslaved people on a road towards freedom. The story of God's persistently patient love, guiding a fear-filled congregation through the wilderness as they readied themselves for new land and a new life. The story of God's wise, resilient love, raising up leaders amidst the agony and the despair of exile. As he remembers to them the story of God's everlasting love and faithfulness, fearful find strength, the grieving no sustenance, the despairing catch a glimpse of the light that is tomorrow's dawn. This is a story that remembers to them who they are and to whom they belong. Holding this story in their hearts, they respond to him with the gift of hospitality, inviting the stranger to their table, and in so doing, coming to the realization, as they break bread together, that they have not been forsaken, that they continue to be held in the arms of a love that chooses to defy death's tomb. Stay with us through the night. Stay with us through the grief. Stay with us, blessed stranger, till the morning brings relief. In a week that has been filled with unimaginable sorrow and grief, in a time when social distancing keeps us from face-to-face conversation and hugs and personal visits, in a time such as this, we pause and remember a story that reminds us that we are not forgotten, that we are not alone, that there is one who will stay with us till the morning brings relief. Excuse me. It is in this time when we are not able to gather in community one with another, when we're not able to gather within the walls of our own church building. It is in such a time as this that we need to be more attentive and intentional to those places, those moments of encounter with the Spirit of the risen Christ. As Easter people, we believe that the sacred is not limited to four walls. As Easter people, we believe the risen Christ encounters us in our daily living. The risen Christ is there in that child, holding the first caterpillar of spring in her hand. The risen Christ is there in the family who, with a bit of extra, who drop off a check to the local food bank so that that single mom raising her kids can have enough food on the table for her children. The risen Christ is there in the church elder, reaching out to share a story, to connect by phone with an isolated senior. The risen Christ is the healthcare worker, the first responder, offering a calm and healing presence to a frightened patient. The risen Christ is the blessed stranger who stays with us through the night. One of the things that I've sometimes shared with grieving families is the reminder that the loved one who has died is still there. He or she is still there in their genes, as near as their DNA. DNA carries within it the chromosomes that belong to that beloved family member. As followers of the risen Christ, we carry within us the spiritual DNA of Jesus. Jesus' commitment to reaching out to the edges of to reaching beyond the edges of the familiar and the comfortable. His choice to sit with the wounded and the grieving. His determination to exercise radical hospitality. His unconditional acceptance of all whom he encountered along the way. His spiritual DNA has been shared with us throughout our lives. You see, what's important to remember this morning, this week, I think, and in the days to come, is that Emmaus is our story. It's not just the story of Clopas and his partner. It is the story of every person grieving, fearing, doubting. Every person longing for an encounter with the one, with the blessed stranger who offers the hospitality of God's love and healing amid life's wounds. Stay with us through the night. Stay with us through the dread. Stay with us, blessed stranger, till the morning breaks new bread. This week in our communities, we need more than ever to stay open to those moments when the holy will speak to us of hope and healing. May we remember our story, and in so doing, keep our hearts and souls open for those moments when we will be gifted with the presence of God's healing love. May we open our hearts and our souls to discover the ways in which we can embody the hospitality that is Christ's love and compassion for all people. May all God's people remember that in life, in death, in life beyond death, God is with us. We are not alone. Amen.